The laughter began before Aloan Vance could reach the door. It started as a murmur near the fountain, then spread through the ballroom like wildfire catching dry leaves. Within seconds, 500 guests had turned to stare at her, their faces twisted with amusement, disgust, or that peculiar hunger people display when watching someone else's destruction. Aloan stood frozen in the center of the Aldworth Palace ballroom, her sage green gown suddenly feeling like a target painted across her body. The chandeliers above cast merciless light on everything. The whispers behind gloved hands, the pointing fingers, and the way couples stepped backward as though her disgrace might be contagious. She didn't understand. Not yet. 3 minutes ago, she'd been searching for her fiancé, Lord Hadrian Cresswell. They were to announce their engagement formally tonight, before the king and queen themselves. Her mother had wept with joy when Hadrian proposed 6 months ago. Her father had called it the salvation of their family. Now Hadrian stood on the raised platform at the far end of the ballroom. But there was no music, only his voice, carrying words that dismantled her life with surgical precision. "And so I must confess the truth to this honorable assembly," Hadrian was saying, his handsome face arranged in an expression of wounded nobility. "Miss Aloan Vance is not the woman she pretends to be. She is a liar, a schemer, and a thief." The crowd gasped. Eloan's heart stopped. "I discovered just yesterday that she has been systematically stealing documents from my family's estate, private correspondence, financial records. She intended to use them for blackmail, to extort money from my father under threat of scandal. No, this wasn't happening. When I confronted her, she threatened to destroy my family's reputation with fabricated accusations. She claimed—" Hadrian paused, letting the silence build. "That my father has been forging land deeds, that we've been displacing tenant families through fraudulent debts. Can you imagine? The Cresswell family, who have served the crown for 7 generations, accused of common theft by a woman with nothing but spite in her heart." Eloan tried to speak, to scream that it was all true, that she'd seen the forged documents with her own eyes, that 17 families had lost their homes in the past year alone. But her voice wouldn't come. Her throat had closed around the words like a fist. She remembered finding the hidden room behind Lord Edmund Cresswell's study. She'd been looking for writing paper to send a letter to her sister. Instead, she'd found ledgers filled with properties that didn't exist, debts that had been manufactured, signatures that had been forged, names of families she recognized: the Thorntons, the Bellamy widow, old Mr. Pembury who'd served in the king's cavalry for 30 years. All of them homeless now. All of them told they'd lost their land through legal means. When she'd confronted Hadrian 2 days ago, demanding he make it right before she could marry him, he'd grown very still. "You shouldn't have found that room," he'd said quietly. "That was careless of father, but it can be fixed." She'd thought he meant fixing the fraud, restoring the families, doing the right thing. Fool, fool, fool. "Furthermore," Hadrian continued, "I have learned that Miss Vance's family is in considerable debt. Her father owes £17,000 to various creditors. It seems she saw our engagement as an opportunity to solve her family's financial problems through dishonest means." Eloan finally found her voice. "That's a lie." Every head turned toward her. The crowd parted, creating a corridor of hostile faces between her and Hadrian. "Is it a lie that your family is in debt?" Hadrian asked, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "Is it a lie that you were found in my father's private study without permission? Is it a lie that you've been telling anyone who'll listen that the Cresswells are criminals?" Lady Sibylla Cresswell stepped forward from the crowd, her silver gown shimmering like armor. "I'm afraid I must confirm my son's account. I personally discovered Miss Vance rifling through my husband's documents. When I asked what she was doing, she fled without explanation. It had happened nothing like that. Lady Sibylla had found her, yes, But Elowyn had tried to explain, had begged her to look at what her husband was doing. Lady Sibylla had simply smiled that cold smile and said, "You should have kept quiet, dear. Now we'll have to be unpleasant." "She's lying," Elowyn said, her voice shaking. "They're all lying. The Cresswells have been stealing land from innocent families. I saw the proof. 17 families have lost everything because of them." "You see?" Hadrian spread his hands. "Even now, she spreads her poison. Your Majesties, honored guests, I apologize for bringing this ugliness into your beautiful celebration. I only wished to warn society about the viper I nearly took as my wife." The king and queen sat on their elevated thrones, watching the spectacle. The king whispered something to a nearby advisor. "Mr. and Mrs. Vance," the king said, his voice cutting through the murmurs, "what say you of these accusations against your daughter?" Elowyn turned to her parents, desperate. Her mother wouldn't meet her eyes. Her father's face had turned to stone. "Your Majesty," her father said slowly, I cannot explain my daughter's behavior. If she has brought dishonor upon the Cresswell family, then she has brought dishonor upon us all." The ground seemed to shift beneath Elowyn's feet. "Father, please. You know me. You know I wouldn't lie about something like this. They're stealing from people. From widows and orphans and veterans. Please, you have to believe me." Her father finally looked at her. In his eyes, she saw something worse than anger. She saw calculation. The Vances needed the Cresswell connection. Without it, their debts would consume them. Her father was choosing survival over his own daughter. "I think," he said carefully, "that Elowyn has been under considerable strain. Perhaps she imagined these accusations. Perhaps her mind has become unwell." "I'm not unwell." Elowyn's voice cracked. "I'm telling the truth." "Someone should remove her," Lady Sibylla said with practiced concern, "before she embarrasses herself further." Guards began moving toward Elowyn. She stumbled backward, her heel catching on her gown. This couldn't be happening. She'd tried to do the right thing, and now she was being destroyed for it. Hadrian descended from the platform, walking toward her with that same charming smile he'd worn when he proposed. When he reached her, he leaned close. His whisper meant only for her ears. "You should have kept quiet, Elowyn. You should have married me and looked the other way like a good wife. But you had to be righteous." His smile didn't waver. "Now you have nothing. No fiancé, no family, no reputation. Who will believe you? Who will help you?" Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "Someone will. The truth always comes out." "Does it? Look around. These people don't want truth. They want entertainment." He straightened, raising his voice. "Guards, please escort Miss Vance from the premises. Gently. She's clearly unwell." Hands gripped Elowyn's arms. She struggled, but the guards were strong. The crowd watched her being dragged toward the doors, their faces blurring into a sea of judgment. This was how it ended. Destroyed in public, abandoned by her family, branded a liar and a thief. "Stop." The single word cut through the ballroom like a blade. The guards froze. The crowd went silent. Even Hadrian's smug expression flickered with uncertainty. Elowyn turned her head toward the voice. A man was walking through the crowd, which parted before him like water before a ship's prow. He was tall, dark-haired, dressed in midnight black that made the other guests' finery look garish. His face was all sharp angles, a strong jaw, straight nose, eyes the color of a winter storm. He moved with the controlled grace of someone who had never once doubted his own power. Elowyn recognized him instantly. Everyone did. Alaric Vane, Duke of Blackmere, the wealthiest man in the Northern Territories, the man the newspapers called the Shadow Duke because he rarely appeared in society and, when he did, he never stayed long. The man who had been feuding with the Cresswell family for as long as anyone could remember. "Your Grace," Hadrian said, recovering his composure. "This is a private matter. Surely you don't wish to involve yourself in—" I said stop. The Duke's voice was quiet, but it carried an authority that made Hadrian's confident tone sound like a child's whining. "Release her." The guards looked to Hadrian, then to the king. The king raised an eyebrow but nodded slightly. The guards released Elowin's arms. She stumbled, nearly falling. Before she could catch herself, the Duke was there, his hand steady on her elbow. "Can you stand?" he asked, his voice low, meant only for her. Yes. Good." He turned to face the crowd, keeping her slightly behind him. "I've heard quite a performance tonight. Lord Cresswell paints a compelling picture of a scheming woman trying to destroy an honorable family." His gaze swept the room, but I find myself curious about the details he left out. "There are no details," Hadrian said tightly. "Only the facts I've presented." "Facts." The Duke's smile was thin as a knife edge. "Such as the 17 families who've lost their lands in the past year? The widow Bellamy, who was told her husband's will was invalid due to a debt he never incurred? The Thornton farm, seized over a loan document that appeared mysteriously after Old Man Thornton died?" The crowd murmured. Elowin's heart began to pound, but differently now. Not with fear. With something like hope. "Those were legitimate legal proceedings," Lord Edmund Cresswell called from the crowd, his face red. "Were they? Then you won't mind an audit. A formal examination of every deed transfer, every debt claim, every document your family has filed in the past 5 years." The Duke's smile widened. "After all, if everything is legitimate, you have nothing to fear." Silence. Absolute silence. Elowin saw fear flicker behind their carefully constructed masks. "This is absurd," Hadrian said, but his voice had lost its confidence. "You're defending a woman you don't even know based on nothing but—" "Based on evidence I've been gathering for 3 years." The Duke's voice hardened. "Did you think I hadn't noticed the pattern, Cresswell? Families losing everything, always to your family's benefit?" He stepped forward. "You've been clever. Careful, but not careful enough. These are baseless accusations from a political enemy," Lady Sibylla said, her voice shrill. "Your Grace has always hated our family. I have always despised criminals who hide behind respectability. If that describes your family, Lady Cresswell, then yes, I hate you." The Duke turned to the King and Queen, bowing precisely. "Your Majesties, I formally request an investigation into the Cresswell family's land dealings. I will provide my evidence to the Crown's investigators at their convenience." The King studied him for a long moment, then he nodded. "Your request is noted, Your Grace. We will consider it. That is all I ask." The Duke turned back to Elowin. "Miss Vance, you've been publicly accused without trial, abandoned by your family, and nearly dragged from this room like a criminal. I suspect you have nowhere to go tonight." Elowin's throat tightened. "No, Your Grace." "Then come with me." He offered his arm. "You'll be safe at Blackmere. No one will touch you there." She hesitated. This man was a stranger. A powerful stranger with his own agenda, his own reasons for opposing the Cresswells. She would be trading one form of danger for another. But when she looked at her parents, they looked away. When she looked at the crowd, she saw no allies. When she looked at Hadrian, she saw the face of a man who had tried to destroy her and nearly succeeded. The Duke was watching her, his gray eyes patient. "I'm offering you protection, Miss Vance. Nothing more, nothing less. The choice is yours." Elowin thought of the families the Cresswells had ruined. She thought of the widow Bellamy, crying outside the courthouse. She thought of the Thornton children, sent to workhouses because their home had been stolen. Someone had to stop them. Someone had to fight. She took the Duke's arm. "Thank you, Your Grace." Something flickered in his eyes. Respect? Perhaps. or recognition. "Don't thank me yet," he said quietly. "This is only the beginning." He led her through the silent crowd, past her pale-faced parents, past the furious Cresswells, past 500 guests who would gossip about this night for years. The massive doors opened before them, and cold winter air rushed in. Behind her, Alawen heard Hadrian's voice, tight with controlled rage. "You'll regret this, Blackmere. Both of you will regret this." The Duke didn't turn. Neither did Elowin. They walked into the night together, leaving the wreckage of her old life behind. The carriage ride passed in fragments. Elowin sat across from the Duke, wrapped in a blanket one of his footmen had provided. She was shaking, though whether from cold or shock, she couldn't tell. The streets of the capital slid past the windows, gaslight casting moving shadows across the Duke's angular face. He hadn't spoken since they'd left the palace. He simply sat there, watching her with those winter-gray eyes, as if she were a puzzle he was trying to solve. "You're wondering why I helped you," he said finally. Elowin's voice came out hoarse. "The thought had crossed my mind. What do you know about me, Miss Vance?" "What everyone knows? You're the Duke of Blackmere. You control most of the shipping in the Northern Territories. You rarely appear in society, and you've been feuding with the Cresswells for—" She hesitated. "For reasons no one seems to know. 15 years. His voice was flat. "I've been trying to destroy them for 15 years. "Why?" The Duke was silent for a long moment. Outside, the city gave way to countryside, the gaslights replaced by moonlight. "That's a conversation for another time," he said. "For now, I need to know what you saw. The documents, the ledgers, everything." Elowin closed her eyes, calling up memories she wished she could forget. "I found a hidden room behind Lord Edmund's study. There were ledgers with property transfers that didn't match public records, debt documents with forged signatures. I recognized some of them because I'd seen the real signatures in correspondence. Names of families, amounts, dates." She opened her eyes. 17 families in the past year alone. Probably more before that. "Can you remember specific details? Names? Numbers?" "Some. I have a good memory for figures." She laughed bitterly. "My father always said it was unbecoming in a woman. It's brought you the truth. That's worth more than propriety." The Duke leaned forward. "Miss Vance, you have information I need. You've seen documents I've been trying to access for years. With your testimony, your memories, I can build a case that will bring the Cresswells down. And what do I get in return? Besides a carriage ride away from my own destruction? Protection. The Cresswells will try to silence you now that you've become a threat. Hadrian will claim you're mentally unwell. His mother will whisper poison in every ear. Your own family has abandoned you. You have no resources, no allies, and no safe harbor." Every word struck like a hammer. Because it was true. All of it. "But at Blackmere," the Duke continued, "you're beyond their reach. My estate is a fortress. My staff is loyal, and my name carries enough weight to shield you from the worst of the scandal. For how long? I can't stay hidden at your estate forever." The Duke sat back, studying her. "You're practical. Good. Then you'll appreciate my proposal." "What proposal?" "Marry me." Elowin's breath stopped. "I'm sorry?" "Marry me. Become the Duchess of Blackmere. As my wife, you'll have standing, resources, protection that no one can strip away. You'll be untouchable." "You can't be serious." "I'm always serious about strategy. Miss Vance. You don't even know me." "I know enough." He counted on his fingers. "You discovered a powerful family's crimes and chose to confront them instead of looking away. You stood alone in that ballroom and insisted on the truth even when everyone called you a liar. You're sitting in this carriage considering my offer instead of weeping into your hands. Those facts tell me everything I need. They tell you I'm stubborn and foolish. They tell me you have courage. That's rare. His eyes held hers. "I don't need a wife who loves me, Miss Vance. I need a partner who can help me destroy the people who've been ruining innocent lives for decades. You have information I need. I have protection you need. It's a fair exchange." Eloin's mind raced. And what happens after? If we succeed, if the Cresswells fall, what then? You'd have your own income, your own household if you wanted it. The marriage would give you independence, not take it away. He paused. "I have no intention of controlling you. I need someone who can think, plan, and fight. Everything I've seen tonight suggests you can do all three. If I do this," she said slowly, "I have conditions." The Duke raised an eyebrow. "You're in no position to negotiate." "I'm in the only position to negotiate. You need what's in my head. I need what you're offering. That makes us equals." Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, but close. "Go on." "First, I want the families who were wronged to be restored. Not just punished, restored. Their lands returned, their debts cleared, their names vindicated." "Agreed. What else?" "Second, I want to be a genuine partner in this, not just a source of information. I want to know the plan. I want to help execute it. I want to be in the room when they fall." "That's dangerous. So is everything else about this arrangement." The Duke studied her for a long moment. "Agreed. Anything else?" "One more thing. I want to know why. The real reason you've spent 15 years trying to destroy the Cresswells." The carriage had slowed. Through the window, Eloin could see a massive estate rising against the moonlit sky, all dark stone and ancient towers. The Duke was quiet for so long she thought he might refuse. Then he nodded. "Once, the Cresswells killed my younger sister. They made it look like an accident, a fall from a horse during a hunt." His voice remained steady, but his hands had tightened on his knees. She was 19. She'd discovered something about their business dealings and threatened to expose them. 3 days later, she was dead. "I'm sorry. So am I. Every day, for 15 years. He looked at her. "I've never been able to prove it, but I know. And I've spent every moment since then working to gather enough evidence to destroy them. You, Miss Vance, may be the key I've been waiting for." The carriage stopped. Footmen rushed to open the door. "So," the Duke said, "do we have an agreement?" Eloin looked at the estate looming before her, at the man who'd just shared his deepest wound, at the uncertain future stretching ahead. Then she thought of Hadrian's face as he announced her disgrace, her father's eyes as he chose reputation over his own daughter, the widow Bellamy's tears. She extended her hand. "We have an agreement." The Duke's grip was firm, warm, and surprisingly gentle. "Then welcome to Blackmere, Miss Vance. We have work to do." Blackmere Hall rose from the moors like something out of a Gothic novel. 4 stories of gray stone, topped with crenellations that spoke of centuries when lords had to defend their lands by force. Narrow windows watched Eloin's approach like suspicious eyes. The ground stretched endlessly in every direction, wild and beautiful and utterly isolated. "It's not welcoming," the Duke said, watching her reaction, "but it's safe. The Cresswells won't reach you here." "I wasn't expecting welcoming." Eloin studied the ancient stones. "I was expecting exactly this." The doors opened before them, revealing a great hall lit by candlelight and servants assembled in perfect lines. At their head stood a woman with steel gray hair and a spine to match. "Your Grace," she said with a precise curtsy, "welcome home, and this must be Miss Vance." "Mrs. Aldridge, this is my betrothed. She'll be the Duchess of Blackmere within the fortnight. She's recovering from a difficult evening and requires care. See to it." If Mrs. Aldridge was surprised by the announcement, she didn't show it. Her sharp eyes took in Eloin's disheveled gown, her red-rimmed eyes, the careful way she held herself together. "Of course, Your Grace." Miss Vance? The Duke released Elowen's arm. Rest tonight. Tomorrow we begin. Then he was gone, disappearing into the depths of the manor. Mrs. Aldridge led Elowen through corridors lined with portraits of stern-faced ancestors, up a spiral staircase, and into a suite of rooms larger than her family's entire townhouse. The Duke keeps to the West Tower, Mrs. Aldridge explained. You'll have privacy here. Mrs. Aldridge. Elowen hesitated. What should I expect? From the Duke. From this arrangement. The older woman studied her. I've served His Grace for 23 years. I was here when his sister died. I watched him bury his grief in work and vengeance. She paused. He's not an easy man. He doesn't trust easily, doesn't open easily. But he's fair. He's honest. And he protects what's his. I'm not his. Not really. You will be. And when you are, there's no safer place in the world than at his side. The first 3 weeks passed in a whirlwind. The Duke wasted no time. The morning after her arrival, Elowen found a schedule slipped under her door. Etiquette tutors at 9, dancing instruction at 11, household management at 2, strategy sessions with the Duke at 8 each evening. You need to become a duchess, he explained during their first dinner together. Not just in name, in presence, in knowledge, in the way you carry yourself. When we appear in society, every eye will be watching. You need to be flawless. So Elowen learned. She memorized the proper form of address for every rank of nobility. She practiced curtsies until her legs ached. She studied Blackmere's history, its alliances, and its enemies. The tutors were thorough, but the evening sessions with the Duke were the true education. Each night at 8, she descended to his study, a room lined with books and maps and evidence of his 15-year campaign against the Cresswells. He questioned her about every detail she remembered, the names in the ledgers, the amounts, the dates, the forged signatures. The Bellamy widow, he said one evening, spreading documents across his desk. You said her husband's will was declared invalid. Do you remember the specific claim? A debt of £1,200, supposedly owed to Lord Edmund. The original document appeared 3 weeks after Mr. Bellamy's death. The signature? Forged. I'd seen Mr. Bellamy's real signature on letters to my father. The one on the debt document was close, but the B was wrong. Mr. Bellamy had a distinctive flourish. The forgery was too controlled. The Duke made a note. Good. That's the kind of detail that will matter. Night after night they worked together, piecing together the Cresswells' crimes like a vast and terrible puzzle. Elowen discovered that the Duke had files on nearly every victim, but he'd never been able to prove the connection between the forged documents and the Cresswell family. Until her. You're the witness I've been waiting for, he told her one evening. You saw the originals. You can testify to what was in that room. Elowen found herself looking forward to these sessions, not just for the work, but for the glimpses they offered of the man behind the title. The Duke was cold on the surface, but beneath that ice, she caught flickers of something else, dry humor, genuine respect when she challenged his assumptions, and grief. Always grief, when his sister's name arose. What was she like? Elowen asked one evening. Your sister? The Duke went still. For a moment she thought she'd overstepped. Then he said quietly, fierce, impulsive. She laughed too loudly and spoke too freely and never once apologized for taking up space. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. She would have liked you. Why? Because you stood in that ballroom and told the truth even when everyone called you a liar. She would have called that magnificently stupid and brave in equal measure. The smile faded. She trusted the wrong people. She thought if she just explained what she discovered, they'd do the right thing. She didn't understand that some people would rather destroy the truth than face it. Like Hadrian. Exactly like Hadrian. The Duke's eyes met hers. I won't let them do to you what they did to her. Whatever else this arrangement is or isn't, I will keep you safe. A current passed between them in that moment. Elowen couldn't name it, wouldn't let herself name it, but she felt it nonetheless. I believe you, she said, and for the first time since that terrible night at the palace, she truly did. 2 weeks into her education, a letter arrived from her mother. Elowen recognized the handwriting immediately, her heart clenching as she broke the seal. For one foolish moment she allowed herself to hope. Elowen, your father and I have discussed your situation at length. Given the circumstances, we feel it is best for everyone if you do not attempt to contact us or your sister again. The scandal you've brought upon our family name is devastating enough without prolonging the association. We wish you well in whatever future you may find. Your mother. The letter slipped from Elowen's fingers. She didn't cry. She'd done her crying those first nights at Blackmere. Now she simply felt hollow, a space where family should have been, carved out and empty. A knock at her door. She hastily retrieved the letter, composing her features. Come in. Mrs. Aldridge entered, pausing when she saw Elowen's face. His Grace requests your presence in the study, miss. A messenger has arrived from London. It seems the Cresswells have made their move. The hollow feeling crystallized into something harder, something useful. Tell His Grace I'll be there in 5 minutes. When Mrs. Aldridge left, Elowen walked to the fireplace and fed her mother's letter to the flames. She watched it burn, watching the last link to her old life turn to ash. Then she straightened her spine and went to join the Duke. The messenger's news was worse than Elowen had anticipated. They're claiming you've been committed to an asylum, the Duke said, his voice tight with controlled fury. Hadrian has filed papers with a magistrate stating that you suffered a mental collapse at the palace ball and fled before you could receive proper care. Elowen sank into a chair. They're trying to discredit me before I can testify. It's clever. If you're legally declared incompetent, nothing you say will matter. He handed her the document. They've already found a physician willing to sign the commitment papers, a Dr. Hartwell. He claims he examined you at the palace and found you suffering from hysterical delusions. I've never met any Dr. Hartwell. Of course you haven't. But his signature carries weight. And the Cresswells have enough influence to push this through if we don't act quickly. What do? We accelerate our timeline. The Duke moved to his desk, pulling out a stack of invitations. Lady Ashworth is hosting a charity auction in 4 days. Everyone who matters will be there, including the Cresswells. We were planning to wait another month before your public debut, but we can't afford to wait now. 4 days? I'm not ready. You're ready enough. He looked at her, his gray eyes fierce. You need to appear in society as my Duchess, composed, credible, undeniably sane. Every person who sees you will be a witness against Hartwell's lies. And if I fail? If I freeze? Or say the wrong thing? You won't. He crossed to her, kneeling so their eyes were level. I've watched you for 3 weeks. You've mastered everything we've thrown at you. You've stood up to me in arguments when men twice your age back down. You are ready, Elowen. You just need to believe it. It was the first time he'd used her given name. Alaric. She tested his name in return, watching something flicker in his eyes. What if they try something at the auction? They'll try to corner you, unsettle you, make you look unstable in front of witnesses. His jaw tightened. That's why you stay close to me. No matter what they say, no matter what they do, you don't let them see you rattled. Can you do that? Yes. Promise me. I promise. He held her gaze for a long moment, something unspoken passing between them. Then he stood, the moment broken. We have 4 days to prepare. He paused at the door. And Elowen? Whatever happens, remember, you're not alone anymore. The night before the auction, Elowen couldn't sleep. She found herself wandering to the library, seeking distraction, only to discover the Duke already there. He stood at the window, a glass of whiskey in hand, staring out at the moonlit moors. He'd removed his coat and cravat, his shirt loosened at the throat. He looked almost human like this, almost vulnerable. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked without turning. "No. You?" "I rarely sleep before a battle." "Are you frightened?" she asked, joining him at the window. "I'm never frightened. I'm prepared." Liar. A ghost of a smile. "Perhaps. But fear is a luxury I can't afford. Too much depends on tomorrow." "Your sister?" "Yes. And you?" He turned to face her fully. "I didn't expect that. When I brought you here, you were a means to an end, but somewhere in the past 3 weeks..." He trailed off. "Somewhere in the past 3 weeks? What?" "You became something I want to protect. Not because of strategy. Because of you." His eyes searched hers. "That complicates things." Elowen's heart was pounding. "Does it?" "It makes me care whether you survive this. Not just whether we win, but whether you're whole at the end of it." He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered against her cheek. "I haven't cared about someone's survival in a very long time. I'd forgotten how terrifying it is. Alaric, get some rest." He dropped his hand, stepping back. "Tomorrow we face them together. Whatever happens, you stay close to me." "I will." "And Elowen?" She paused at the door. "Whatever you see in my eyes when I look at you, it's real. I don't know what to do with it yet. But it's real." She carried those words back to her room, holding them close against the fear of what tomorrow would bring. Lady Ashworth's charity auction was held at Thornfield House, a sprawling estate that blazed with candlelight against the evening sky. Carriages lined the drive for half a mile. Elowen descended from the Blackmere carriage on the Duke's arm, wearing midnight blue silk that made her look like a queen of shadows. Sapphires glittered at her throat, the Blackmere family jewels, presented to her that morning without ceremony. "They belong to my mother," the Duke had said. "Now they belong to you." The weight of them felt like armor. Heads turned as they entered the grand ballroom. Whispers erupted like brushfire. "Is that the Vance girl? The one who went mad at the palace?" "She doesn't look mad. She looks magnificent." Elowen held herself like a queen, her hand steady on Alaric's arm. She smiled at those who caught her eye, nodded graciously to acquaintances, acted in every way like a woman who had never been publicly destroyed. "You're doing beautifully," Alaric murmured. "I'm terrified." "It doesn't show. Keep walking." Lady Ashworth intercepted them near the refreshment tables. "Your Grace, and this must be your mysterious bride." She extended her hand. "I've heard so much about you, my dear." "I imagine you have, Lady Ashworth. Not all of it flattering." "None of it flattering, actually, which makes your composure all the more impressive." A thin smile. "I do enjoy being surprised. Welcome to Thornfield." As Lady Ashworth moved away, Elowen spotted them across the ballroom, Hadrian, flanked by his parents, holding court near the orchestra. "Easy," Alaric said, feeling her tense. "Not yet." "When?" "When we control the moment." "Not before." They circulated through the crowd. Elowen discussed charity initiatives with Lady Pemberton. She debated literature with Sir Marcus Thorne. With each interaction, she felt the narrative shifting. The madwoman was articulate, poised, intelligent. The scandal began to look less like fact and more like slander. Then Hadrian saw her. She watched his face change. The flash of shock, the rapid calculation, the mask sliding back into place. He excused himself and began moving toward her, his parents close behind. "They're coming," she said quietly. "I see them. Stay calm. Let them make the mistakes." Hadrian reached them first, his smile sharp as broken glass. "Well, the Duchess of Blackmere." He made the title sound like an insult. "Tell me, Does your husband know he's married a thief and a lunatic? He knows he's married a woman who tells the truth, Elowyn replied evenly. I understand that's an unfamiliar concept in your family. Lord Edmund stepped forward, his face flushed. How dare you show yourself in decent society? You should be in an asylum where you belong. And yet here I am, sane, free, and in possession of a very good memory. Elowyn held his gaze without flinching. How are your land deals progressing, Lord Edmund? Any new families to displace this month? You vicious little... Careful. Alaric's voice cut through like a blade. You're speaking to my wife. In public. I'd advise you to remember your manners. Hadrian moved closer to Elowyn, dropping his voice. You think you've won something tonight? We have the commitment papers ready. One word from my father to Judge Alderton, and you'll spend the rest of your life in a padded cell. Then why haven't you done it already? His jaw tightened. Because you need me to look unstable first. And so far, all they've witnessed is your family making threats while I remain perfectly composed. Elowyn smiled sweetly. It must be so frustrating. You'll regret this. His whisper was venomous. You tried to destroy me once already, Hadrian. You failed. He grabbed her wrist, hard, painful, meant to frighten. Before Elowyn could react, Alaric was there, his hand clamped around Hadrian's forearm with crushing force. Remove your hand from my wife, Alaric said, his voice terrifyingly calm, or I will remove it from your body. Hadrian's face contorted with rage, but he released Elowyn's wrist and stepped back. This isn't over, he spat. No, Alaric agreed. It isn't. But when it is, you'll be the one in ruins. The Cresswells retreated. Elowyn's wrist throbbed, but she kept her expression serene. Are you all right? Alaric asked quietly. I'm fine. He's scared. I could see it. He should be. He was interrupted by a commotion near the entrance. A woman's voice, raised in distress. Elowyn's blood ran cold. Her mother stood in the doorway, supported by Lord Edmund, weeping dramatically. Please, her mother cried, loud enough for everyone to hear. Someone must help my daughter. She's not well. The Duke has taken advantage of her confused state. No. The word escaped Elowyn like a punch. The crowd murmured. Doubt crept into faces that had smiled at her moments before. This is the move, Alaric said grimly. They're using your own mother to discredit you. I have to speak. Wait. If you confront her publicly, you look like a daughter turned against her family. Then what do I do? Let me handle it. No. Elowyn squeezed his hand, then released it. This is my mother, my family, my battle. She met his eyes. Trust me. She saw him struggle with it. Finally, he nodded. I'm right behind you. Elowyn walked toward her mother, guests stepping aside as she passed. Every eye in the room was watching. Mother, she said gently, you came all this way. Her mother's tears dried instantly, replaced by calculation. Elowyn, darling, come home with me. These people have filled your head with lies. The only lies, Mother, are the ones you're telling now. Elowyn's voice carried clearly. I'm not mad. I've never been mad. And you know it. You're confused, sweetheart. You abandoned me at the palace. You wrote to tell me I was no longer your daughter. And now you're here, performing grief. Because Lord Edmund paid you to discredit me. Elowyn turned to face the crowd. Ask her. Ask her how much the Cresswells offered to put on this show. Her mother's face twisted with fury. You ungrateful little... How much, Mother? The silence stretched. Her mother's composure shattered. 2,000 pounds, she spat. 2,000 pounds to come here and tell these people what you really are. A selfish, reckless girl who destroyed her own family because she couldn't keep her mouth shut. The crowd gasped. Even Lord Edmund looked horrified. The admission had been too raw, too revealing. Thank you, Mother. Elowen's voice was steady despite the tears burning her eyes. That's all I needed everyone to hear. She turned and walked back to Alaric, her head held high, while behind her the room erupted in chaos. The aftermath of Lady Ashworth's auction set London ablaze with gossip. Within hours, the story had spread. The Vance mother, paid by the Cresswells to declare her own daughter mad. Whispers became newspaper headlines. Speculation became investigation. 3 days after the auction, Lord Pemberton stood in Parliament and demanded a formal inquiry into the Cresswell land dealings. 2 days after that, Judge Alderton quietly resigned. The commitment papers disappeared, unsigned. But it wasn't enough. Not for Elowen, not for Alaric, not for the 17 families who'd lost everything. We need a public reckoning, Alaric said one evening. Something definitive. The land registry clerk, Tobias Ward. Did he agree to testify? He's frightened. The Cresswells threatened his family. Elowen studied the papers spread across his desk. Forged deeds, manufactured debts, lives destroyed. What if we create a situation where the Cresswells incriminate themselves, and Ward only has to confirm what everyone already sees? Alaric looked up sharply. What are you thinking? Lady Ashworth's autumn gala, a grander affair than even her charity auction, is next week. Everyone will be there. We need to force a confrontation they can't spin their way out of. That's dangerous. If we don't try, they'll rebuild. They'll find new victims. Elowen met his eyes. Your sister deserves justice. So do all the others. Alaric was silent for a long moment. Then he reached across the desk and took her hand. When did you become braver than me? I'm not braver. I'm just more stubborn. He laughed. A real laugh, rare and warm. Elowen, whatever happens at the gala, I need you to know something. What? This stopped being about strategy for me a long time ago. You're the reason I remember what it feels like to hope. I'd forgotten. And then you stood in that ballroom, abandoned by everyone, and refused to break. Tears pricked Elowen's eyes. I love you. The words seemed to surprise him as much as her. I didn't plan to. I didn't want to. But I do. She rose, circling the desk, and took his face in her hands. I love you too. Not because you saved me. Because you saw me. Really saw me. When everyone else looked away. Because you trusted me to fight beside you instead of hiding me away. She kissed him, and he pulled her close. And for one perfect moment, the battle waiting ahead ceased to exist. Lady Ashworth's autumn gala was the event of the year. 300 guests filled the grand ballroom, and everyone was watching the Cresswells, wondering when the next blow would fall. Elowen wore crimson silk, the color of courage and defiance. Alaric was in black as always. They moved through the crowd like generals surveying a battlefield. It came sooner than expected. Lord Edmund, desperate to salvage his reputation, had arranged a speech, a public defense of his family's honor. Friends, Lord Edmund began, I must address the vicious rumors that have plagued my family, lies spread by those with political vendettas, accusations without evidence. The Duchess of Blackmere, he pointed toward Elowen, has made wild claims about forged documents and stolen lands. She offers no proof. If there's no proof, Elowen called out, cutting through the murmurs, then you won't mind if I provide some. The room went still. She walked toward the stage, Alaric beside her, the assembly clearing a path. She carried a leather satchel that hadn't left her side all evening. You say I have no evidence, Lord Edmund. Let me show everyone what I have. She opened the satchel, pulling out document after document. A deed transfer for the Bellamy property, signed 3 weeks after Mr. Bellamy's death, using a forged signature. Here's his real signature from a letter dated the same year. Notice the differences. Murmurs rippled through the room. An invoice for a debt the Thornton family supposedly owed. except the loan was never made. I have bank records proving no such transaction existed. Lord Edmund's face had gone purple. Those documents are fabricated. Then let's ask the man who filed them. She turned to the crowd. Tobias Ward, clerk of the land registry, has been documenting irregularities in Cresswell filings for 2 years. Last night, the Duke of Blackmere offered his protection. A small man emerged from the crowd, pale but determined. It's true. I have records of 17 falsified land transfers. I can provide dates, signatures, everything. This is conspiracy, Hadrian shouted. Then let there be an investigation, Alaric said calmly. If your family is innocent, you have nothing to fear. Open your records. Unless you have something to hide. The silence was devastating. Lord Edmund looked to his allies, but they were stepping back, distancing themselves. Lady Sibylla broke first. This is absurd. Edmund, we don't have to stand here. By what, Lady Sibylla? Elowin's voice cut through. By the truth? By the families your husband destroyed? She pointed into the crowd, where an elderly woman in modest clothes stood watching. Mrs. Bellamy, would you like to address the room? The widow stepped forward, her voice trembling but clear. They took my home. They took everything my husband left me. They told me I owed them £1,200, but Thomas never borrowed money from anyone. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I've been living in a charity house for 3 years because of what they did. Other voices rose. A man who'd lost his family farm. A woman whose father had died in poverty. Story after story. Victim after victim. The dam had broken. Lady Ashworth stepped forward. Lord Edmund, Lady Sibylla, Lord Hadrian, I believe it would be best if you departed my home immediately. You are no longer welcome. You can't do this, Hadrian snarled. You have nothing. Alaric's voice was ice. Your connections have abandoned you. Your influence is ash. You're finished. Guards moved toward the Cresswells. Hadrian's eyes found Elowin, blazing with hatred. This isn't over, he hissed. Yes, it is. Elowin met his gaze without flinching. You threw me away because you thought I was powerless. But I'm still standing, Hadrian. And you're the one being escorted out. The Cresswells were removed. The crowd erupted in conversation. Alaric pulled Elowin aside into a quiet alcove. You did it, he said, his eyes bright with joy. We did it. No, this was you. Your courage. Your memory. Your refusal to be silent. He cupped her face in his hands. My sister would have been proud. I wish I could have known her. She knows you. Somehow, wherever she is, she knows. He kissed her forehead, then her lips. I love you, Elowin Vane, Duchess of Blackmere. I love you, Alaric. She smiled through tears. Even though you're terrible at saying it, I'm practicing. 3 months later, Elowin stood in the great hall of Blackmere, watching morning light stream through ancient windows. The hall had been transformed. 20 women sat at tables learning skills that would change their lives. Reading, writing, accounting, trades. Women who'd been abandoned, defrauded, left with nothing, just as Elowin had been. She called it the Blackmere Foundation. Alaric called it her legacy. Mrs. Aldridge approached. 3 more applications this week, Your Grace. We'll make room. We always make room. The Cresswells had been thoroughly destroyed. Lord Edmund faced trial for fraud. Lady Sibylla had fled to the continent. Hadrian sat in debtor's prison. Every family they'd wronged had been restored. The Bellamy widow had her home back. The Thorntons had reclaimed their farm. Tobias Ward had been promoted and protected. And Elowin, the woman who'd been shamed before an entire court, had become one of the most respected figures in London. A knock at the door. Alaric entered carrying a small velvet box. Another gift? Elowin smiled. Impossible to spoil you. He opened the box, revealing a ring, delicate gold set with a single sapphire that matched her eyes. This was my sister's. She always said she'd give it to the woman who finally made me feel something again. His voice grew rough. I think she'd want you to have it. Elowen's eyes filled with tears. You saved me, Elowen. You think I saved you that night at the palace, but the truth is, I was barely alive before I met you. Just going through motions, waiting for revenge, forgetting how to hope. He slid the ring onto her finger. You reminded me that there is more to life than fighting. She kissed him, soft and slow. I was shamed before an entire court, she whispered. Everyone I trusted abandoned me. I thought my life was over. And now? Now I have a life I never imagined, a purpose that matters, a husband who sees me. She smiled, and occasionally tells me he loves me. I'm practicing. You're getting better. Outside the windows, the moors stretched toward the horizon, wild and beautiful. Blackmere had become a home, not just a fortress, a place of healing. Elowen thought of that terrible night, the laughter, the accusations, the moment she'd realized she was completely alone. She'd thought it was the end of everything. Instead, it had been the beginning. She had been shamed before an entire court. But a duke had stepped forward and said, "You're safe with me." And she was. Not because he protected her, but because he'd taught her to protect herself. She'd been thrown away by people who should have loved her. But she'd found something better. A partner who fought beside her, not in front of her. A love built on respect, not rescue. And together, they'd proven that the darkest moments could lead to the brightest futures, if you were brave enough to keep standing. Thank you for staying with us until the very end. If this story touched something in you, the courage to speak truth, the power of being believed, the strength it takes to rebuild, I hope you'll share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment telling us your favorite moment and where you're listening from. If you're ready for another story where love conquers the impossible, subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the next chapter. You're the reason these stories exist. Thank you for being here, for listening, for believing that even when the world tries to silence you, your voice still matters.